in the 2024 elections is causing a stir in the governing NPP as it rubbishes claims there is a growing public disaffection which will agitate the electorate to seek change.
Discerning and reasonable people will not be looking at
revitalize this prospect of victory if John Mahama is changed. But is John Mahama indeed the NDC's only and bright
Radio Joy 99.7?
together. Prime Insurance, rest assured you are insured.
Super Hits Radio Joy 99.7.
Rubbish and claims that there is widespread public disaffection, corruption, and slow pace of infrastructural development against the ruling New Patriotic Party, which will cause the party's outright defeat in the 2024 elections. According to the Economist Intelligence Unit (EIU) latest report, the NPP will lose the next election because it has not satisfied the electorate in developmental issues and also in dealing with corruption-related issues. But according to the party, which has been raising questions about the EIU's latest report, government has consistently delivered on the promises it made prior to being elected into office, and the projections and predictions of the EIU is not reflected. Well, we get into the NPP's statement reacting directly to the EIU's latest report. But first, what really did the EIU say? My colleague Kwekwa Sante joins me in studio with a copy of the NPP statement. Plus, let's take a look at the election watch as captured by the EIU's latest report. It's a 5-year forecast for Ghana, and he joins me in the studio. Kweku, so we're taking a look at the election watch aspect of that report. What exactly did it say?
So if you go to page 6 of this EIU 5-year forecast for Ghana, it says that the next parliamentary and presidential elections are due in 2024. Under constitutionally mandated term limits, President Akufo-Addo cannot run for a third term. The former president, John Mahama, is reportedly considering running again. But we expect the opposition NDC to try to revitalize its prospects with a fresh candidate. Our baseline forecast is that ongoing public disaffection with a slow pace of improvements in governance, such as infrastructure, job creation, and easing of corruption, will trigger anti-incumbency factors and push the electorate to seek change. The NDC therefore stands a reasonable chance of winning the 2024 election. So a double pivot. It starts by first establishing that President Akufo-Addo is not eligible for another term. NPP will be expected to field a new candidate. The report goes on to say that there are specific issues that they believe will go in favor of the NDC because it will trigger anti-incumbency issues for government to deal with. It cites corruption, it cites job creation, it cites infrastructural development as some of the key issues that are not necessarily going on well in terms of the governance.
And easing of corruption as well.
Exactly. And so these issues, according to EIU, will trigger some of these factors that will make it difficult for the NPP, I beg your pardon, to win the next election, paving the way for a win of a sort for the NDC.
So on that bit, it concludes by saying that the NDC therefore stands a reasonable chance of winning the 2024 elections some years away. So that's the election watch aspect. Of course, I've told you that this EIU report is a 5-year forecast, many parts that we'll be delving into.
It goes into security, it goes into the economy. For instance, it's projecting that the cedi will end at about 7.87 to the dollar. Some of these big reports that the EIU has been serializing in this 5-year forecast.
Already, portions of that with the CD issues have been rejected by some economists, but we're focusing on the political aspect tonight. Maybe we'll just also delve into the security issues it raises. But you've been looking at that statement that has been issued by the NPP a while ago, just before we came on air. What exactly has the party been saying?
So this statement signed by Director of Communications for the party, Yabu Abiyan Samoa, it starts by welcoming the report, and it's usual of the NPP when the EIU brings such report, they welcome it, they say they are going to work towards it. The statement signed by Abiyan Samoa continues that the prediction hangs on assumptions. This is where they begin to take on the EIU and some of the assumptions it raises in the report. It says the EIU hangs its prediction on the usual assumption that presidential power has been rotating over 8-year periods in the Fourth Republic. So they are trying to say that this report is just an assumption to say that because power alternates between the NPP and NDC every 8 years, it is an assumption to sort of claim that the NDC will win the next election. It says that to buttress its prediction, the NDC winning the presidential election and parliamentary elections by extreme majority, according to the EIU, is touting its record of a successful prediction over the years. But the EIU introduces a new and significant double-edged factor. We know that the report states that the NDC will win, but it stands a greater chance, or it revitalizes its prospects if it brings in a fresh candidate. So this statement goes on to say that the quality of leadership, EIU implies that former President Mohammed's record of leadership is so poor that if he becomes the candidate, the NDC predicted win goes up in smoke. That is the NPP's reading of the report that the EIU has put out.
Okay.
To say that if NDC is presenting John Mahama, then they are going to lose. That is not our reading, because
Of the report
EIU
says.
is saying is that the NDC stands a greater
reasonable chance of winning.
if it brings a new candidate. But the report still says that the NDC stands a much bigger chance, irrespective of who it presents into the 2024
Exactly.
election. And we have Wabian Samoa who expatiates some of those points. So the NPP goes on to, as it were, defend its record in governance in terms of employment, infrastructure, anti-corruption. It goes on to say some of the things that they believe they've done that will make Ghanaians vote for them in 2024.
Well, that point was made a while ago also by the Director of Elections of the party, Evans Nimako. Like you said, we'll be speaking to the Director of Communications of the NPP, Yabu Abiyan Samoa. But quickly, let's hear from Evans Nimako.
The new Patriotic Party has
Super Hits Radio. Joy 99.7. Super Hits Radio. Joy
Joined on the phone by the Communications Director of the NPP, Mr. Yabu Abiyan Samoa. We are grateful for your time here on Top Stories, sir. So if the EIU's report or what it says is anything to go by, then it appears that the NPP's mantra of breaking the 8 is just a fallacy, a delusion, or misleading notion, no?
I love the English. This is getting interesting. Fallacy, delusional, otherwise. Why would it be so, Emefa? If we break the 8, technically on the basis of the EIU reports, it means we would have achieved a great deal. Because the EIU is assuming that because of the 8-year cycle, we are not our solution. Since John Mahama wanted the IMF and his party leadership have discredited the IMF, he hasn't come back to the public to tell us his views, whether or not he's sticking to the IMF or he has another thing. We believe that he doesn't have anything beyond the IMF to offer the people of Ghana. And if the IMF is not the solution, then the 8-year cycle will not be automatic this time. It will depend on the quality of leadership. And that we have in abundance.
Okay. Well, it's interesting you're reading the double header angle that you bring into the interpretation that you get from this particular report from the EIU. From what you say, you imply that the EIU is saying that Mr. Mahama has poor leadership and hence the NDC predicted win goes up in smoke if he's retained. What's the basis for this inference? Because from what I read, I don't get what you're actually inferring.
Because John Mahama has been resoundingly rejected by electorate twice. John Mahama's incumbency record, the losses he sustained were at a record high for any incumbent ever. The numbers he lost by were so high because there were a resounding rejection of his lack of capacity to govern the country, the incompetence, the lazy policy making. You understand? And in 2020, he came back. He didn't manage to take it back on the assumption that he had 4 more years to go. Because again, he couldn't bring forward policies to titillate Ghanaian palates and entice Ghanaian voters to his side. He simply does not have the solutions. And NPDC, led by John Mahama, is a no-no. And that is what the EIU says.
But the EIU did not present an either-or situation. It starts by assessing the two candidates as we have it. Mentions that Mr. Akufo-Addo cannot run for a 3rd term, which we all know, but mentions that the former President John Mahama is reportedly considering running again. But we expect the opposition NDC to try to revitalize its prospect with a fresh candidate. But it goes on, however, to say that our baseline forecast is that ongoing public disaffection with a slow pace of improvement in governance, such as infrastructure development, job creation, and easing of corruption, would trigger anti-incumbency factors and push the electorate to seek a change. The NDC, therefore, stands a reasonable chance of winning the 2024 elections. It did not say that if the NDC does not change John Mahama, they will not win the election. Is that not the understanding you all get?
Emefa, that's what I addressed, that mere change for the sake of change is not what this report is about anymore. Because if you say mere change for change, then it's the 8-year cycle at work. But now they are introducing that element of the quality of leadership. You can't ignore that. So if you assume that anti-incumbency factors will kick in, what are the true opposition factors that they are putting on board positively to drive it? You walk away from the incumbent merely because you are dissatisfied?
But it did
you
not
have
say
no
that
policy agenda on the table. There is nothing.
But per your reading,
it doesn't work out that way.
Per your reading, did it say that if they did not change John Mahama, the NDC will not win?
But that's what the report says. The report says if it's John Mahama, it won't work. So they have to revitalize by getting themselves a new leader. And as you and I are speaking now, we know for a fact that the only leader they have at the moment is John Mahama.
Interesting interpretation you put there, because from what I am reading, it did not present an either-or situation. But let me bring in Felix Kwatiofosu.
No, I'm not here. I am speaking to other stations.
That's fine.
Finish with me and deal with the NDC.
Okay.
I'm not here to debate Kwatiofosu.
Okay.
Let him speak to his report. I have done mine. I'll speak to other stations, okay?
Okay. Well, I'll let you go then, because I was hoping that you would wrap up on that. It's not a debate for him to also make input in the statement that you've made. But if you do not accept that, then I would humbly let you off. We are grateful for your time. That's the Communications Director of the NPP, Yauba Bien Samoa. Let me bring in Felix Kwatiofosu. We are grateful for your time here on Top Story tonight, sir. You've been listening to the NPP on this, the implication. It appears that they mentioned that the poor leadership, for instance, of former President Mahama, would make this whole thing that the EIU is saying go up in smoke. You agree?
You have before. Is there any paragraph or sentence in that report that says that?
You'd have to reposition yourself so I can hear you well, Mr. Kwachufosu.
Yes. That doesn't know.
We'll try to reconnect. Let's try again. Mr. Kwachufosu, can you hear me? Okay, so it appears that we have a terrible connection to Mr. Kwachufosu's line. We'll try and establish connection to him, and then we can continue that conversation. I'll also bring in poster Mr. Benefsin on this particular situation. But earlier, Mr. Kwachufosu had this interaction with me.
Despite the accuracy of some of the projections and forecasts that AIU has made, to understand exactly what they do, it's not like they're going to conduct a poll and ask the electorate how they will vote. So this is not a scientific poll. It is essentially political risk analysis, which guides the business decisions of some investors and other businesses. So it's important to get that point. The second point is that the projection they make about the outcome of the 2024 elections is what they call a baseline forecast. So it means that there are minimum expectations that no matter what happens in 2024, the NPP will be thrown out of power. So that position does not depend on the candidates that the opposition brings. I am in the NDC, and I can assure you that all things being equal, President Mahama will be on the ballot box.
Well, that's what Mr. Felix Kwachufosu told me earlier. This is another portion that we'll be interrogating further when I bring in Mr. Benefsin. But let's see if we have a better connection to Mr. Kwachufosu. We are grateful. Once again, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can remember.
Okay, we'll make do with what we have. But the NPP has been reacting to what the EIU has been saying. They admit that there are challenges, but the NPP are up to the task and will fix the issues to win the confidence of Ghanaians such that this report will not materialize. Amongst others, they also bring into question the leadership of former President John Dramani Mahama, which will make nonsense of this particular report. Oh dear. It appears that, I don't know, let's reposition you once again. Mr. Kwachufosu, can you hear me? Okay, it doesn't look like Mr. Kwachufosu is positioned properly for us to continue this. But however, let me try again. Mr. Kwachufosu, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, very far away, but we'll make do with it. You can proceed.
Yes, I was making the point that the EIU intimates that the new patriotic party has been at the constant phase of they have been hopeless in the management of the economy and for that reason, they have incurred the disenchantment and displeasure of the community who cannot wait to see their work and throw them out of power. They say this is a baseline analysis, and as I was explaining in the earlier inset plate, it means that it is the least expectation they have of the outcome of the change.
Well, Mr. Kwachufosu, unfortunately, that connection to you is very terrible. I don't know what the issue really is to your connection there, but maybe we can hear Mr. Kwachufosu's earlier interview with me instead. Then we can go to Mr. Benefsin.
Despite the accuracy of some of the projections and forecasts that AIU has made, to understand exactly what they do, it's not like they're going to conduct a poll and ask the electorate how they will vote. So this is not a scientific poll. It is essentially political risk analysis, which guides the business decisions of some investors and other businesses. So it's important to get that point. The second point is that the projection they make about the outcome of the 2024 elections is what they call a baseline forecast. So it means that there are minimum expectations that no matter what happens in 2024, the NPP will be thrown out of power. So that position does not depend on the candidates that the opposition brings. I am in the NDC, and I can assure you that all things being equal, President Mahama will be on the ballot box. But because of how abysmal the NPP has been and the vastly superior record of the NDC, the Ghanaians are going to throw them out.
But it's interesting that you premise that part of the report that this is not scientific, it's a political risk. There are those who then would say that the first part that you also agree conclusively with could also not be the case.
Well, Emefa, there has no dispute about the modus operandi of the Economic Intelligence Unit over the years. They have got some predictions right, they have got some wrong. But their predictions have never been based on scientific polling, like you find polling agencies doing. So that is a matter of fact.
But do I find you cherry picking? Which one suits you?
The point is that there is what you can refer to as visceral gut feeling analysis. So that analysis is spot on. It is on all fours with both scientific and non-scientific forecasts that have been made. Whoever the MPP wants to bring against President Mahama, and President Mahama is streets ahead of them as far as the 2024 election outcome is concerned.
This report notwithstanding, the NDC has no plans of presenting a fresh presidential candidate. From what you say, Mr. John Dramani Mahama is the man for the next election.
Well, I think that President Mahama resonates across the rank and file of the NDC. Everybody knows that he has a stellar track record, which completely dwarfs anything the MPP has to offer. So on that premise alone, if you have a candidate who has a proven track record, has performed before in the position that he is seeking, and who has performed creditably in a just-ended elections, you don't waste time and resources going to reinvent the wheel.
Okay.
When you can only correct whatever slippages occurred in the previous elections in order to present a more formidable front. So I think that from even a purely common sense standpoint, it does not make sense to go and change a candidate who do so well.
Well, so that's what Phyllis Kwachofusu told me earlier when we spoke on the Midday News. But let me bring in Paul Stebenefson. We are grateful for your time here on Top Story. Well, you have been watching the scene when it comes to polls. You're a pollster yourself. But looking at this latest poll, a little over 2 years to the polls, is it not too early for such predictions, considering the factors and the ability of things changing in a matter of days, months, or even years?
Good evening to our listeners. I think that if the EIU poll had come a year ahead, the EIU has had impeccable success in predicting our polls. And I myself have been doing I'm finishing myself with the book on elections. I've done polls, research on what went wrong, what happened in 2020, looking ahead to 2024. I've just completed some work on the NPP flag bearership. If today, this April, the NDC is to hold a flag bearership contest this month, I think Mahama will win. A year's time, I'm not sure. But if the polls were to be held this April 2022, I think Mahama will win.
In spite of the report saying that the NDC it will revitalize their chances if they present a fresh candidate.
You know, I think that you are talking to me not as a diplomat, so I'll be very blunt. In the aftermath of President Smo's death, Mahama, in his anxiety to also set up his own faction, we've got the Rollins faction, we've got the Moss faction, stepped on toes of people who had been known to be the forefront of the Rollins faction, the Moss faction. So by 2016, there had been a lot of disagreement between Mahama and leading members of these factions. Clearly, if Mahama wins the NDC flag bearership slot, and he's not going to change his running mate, he's going to have difficulties in 2024. And I'm hoping that by the end of July, when I finish my book, I'll be able to give you parallels in the research I've done. You can see I'm speaking in a very guarded manner, but by the end of July, when the book comes out, you will see that some of the things that the EIU are saying are in tandem. Because a third, as per the 2020 result, a third of Ghanaian voters are swinging now. And that's a for the politicians, very risky proportion. But for the Ghanaian electorate, very heartwarming.
So, former President John Dramani Mahama could stay, but the running mates ought to change before the 2024 polls.
Yes, I think that Mahama has a lot of grounds to cover. One of the reasons that Mahama lost so heavily, I mean, NDC getting about 28, 30 seats of the 32 seats they lost back, and Mahama losing by 540,000 votes tells you that there was something Mahama was doing wrong. One of it was his inability to be consistent on the free speeches. This inconsistency made the swing voters who had issues with the MPP governors in the first term vote for the NDC parliamentary and vote against the NDC presidential candidate. This is a true swing voter for you. And I think that Mahama, I'm sure the NDC research team would have done some work on what happened, and they'll be truthful to themselves, and Mahama will have to change his style. Otherwise, he may hit a roadblock in 2024.
We are grateful for your time. That's Ben Efsin, managing editor of the Daily Dispatch newspaper, also a poster that we've been looking at the EIU report, and we've heard the NPP's reaction to it as well. Many apologies once again to you, Mr. Felix Kwachiofusu, our inability to interact with you live. However, we've been hearing from him in our earlier interview. Newsnight starts